Public auctions are used in probate cases for two different reasons, but they almost consistently result in a lower net price to the estate. I'm Bill Gross, and I'm the LAProbateExpert.com. I've been tracking every single LA County court confirmation sale, sales that go to the court in probate for confirmation in Los Angeles for about 4.5 years. I have a spreadsheet of every single court confirmation filing and the result. Now, many get continued or denied, but those that go to sale, I've also tracked who the listing agent was, who the buyer's agent was, the price, and the overbid. And what I can tell you is based on the data, a public auction is more likely to be overbid by 33% of the time than a standard sale. To me, that's an obvious sign of failure. Let's get into the details. There's two types of public auctions in Los Angeles County. One are those conducted by the county public administrator. They have one vendor they choose. They do a request for a quote method where they put out for bid their contract regularly. And the company that has earned that contract is Kennedy Wilson. And their requirement is a couple-fold. One is every single listing has to be sold at public auction. Another, as a result, is there's a lower commission rate. So that's one type, is public auctions done by the public administrator, the County of Los Angeles, when they are the attorneys and representing the estate. The other is a public auction done by a private attorney, a private estate that I think mistakenly thinks the auction will yield them a better result, either by avoiding litigation or the idea that an auction somehow creates a better price. It certainly feels like it when you're there, but it doesn't really work that way. Now, it's also true that a public auction will avoid the 90% rule, meaning that if the inventory and appraisal report comes in too high in order to sell at 90% of that value, like a normal probate case that needs confirmation, that rule is waived when there's a public auction. However, there's 4 different problems that occur with these public auctions. Number one is commonly they restrict the showing time. Now, the best way to get buyers interested in a property is let them see it. And the more they see it, the more confident they're going to feel about buying it. But because of the nature of a public auction, they want to have limited showings at one time or a couple times. And the limited showings, I believe, create less interest, deep interest in the property. It does get somebody to buy it, but it doesn't necessarily get a committed buyer as deeply, number one. Number two, the auctioneers feel like they've done the work. It is, obviously psychologically true that when they do all the work to promote the auction and then sell the property once, they are much less likely to allow me as a buyer's agent to show the property to an investor before the court sale. Now, the probate court requires they allow to have showings and access to the property to the extent they're able to before the court confirmation. But in practice, it's very difficult to see properties that are listed by the public auction listing agents when there's court confirmation. It is like pulling out teeth. Number three is these transactions have lower commissions. Now, obviously, everybody wants to have the best net price. But like many things in life, you can have a lower commission, but have a lower quality outcome. Attorneys understand this because they will say, for example, that the cheap $599 estate plan isn't worth that money, better to pay a higher price and get an expert. And yet they look at real estate agents as all being the same and lowering the commission, being net to the estate better off. But in practice, these auctions usually pay 1.5% or 2% commissions to the buyer or to the listing agent. And as a result, those listing agents will put in less time servicing their listings quite reasonably because they're being paid less. Number four is lower commission to the buyer's agents. And again, these contracts or the competitive pressures will cause them to lower the commission to the buyer's agent from the most common 2.5% down to 2 or 1.5%. Obviously, they're buyer's agents who are going to say, why do all the extra work of the auction when I'm going to get paid, in fact, less money? Now, you might say, so what difference does all that make? We're saving money. But the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And based on my data, a public auction sent to court for overbid is 1/3 more likely to be overbid in court than a standard listing, meaning the price they got is 1/3 more likely too low. And in my mind, anytime you have an overbid in court, probably, I should say anytime, but almost anytime, you haven't overbid. That means there's a failure by the listing agent to get top dollar before it came to court. Now, during the period 2020, 21, when prices were jumping up so quickly, 15% per year higher, obviously over 3-4 months, prices go up. But generally speaking, prices don't go up from the time you file a court sale until the court hearing date. The fact that people want to pay more later just means that something artificially suppressed the price before the court date. Because think about it. In order to buy a property at court confirmation, you have to show up in downtown Los Angeles, pay for $20 for parking, be there at 8:30 in the morning, though usually the court doesn't start till 9 o'clock, have a cashier's check made out to the estate, which means you have to go to the bank the day before, make out the check to the estate, be willing to buy a property with no contingencies, including being willing to pay for cash. Obviously, that limits the pool of buyers tremendously to those that are most savvy, most aggressive, most familiar with the process. And in my mind, the buyers of those properties at that stage expect about a 5% discount to what they otherwise would pay. Now, there's exceptions, and sometimes these properties go for what I call the full retail price. But in general, they're going for a discount to the market price. Otherwise, why would you go through all the extra trouble than buying another property you can buy on the MLS in a more leisurely way? If auctions really worked, then every seller in America would use auctions to sell their property. And auctioneers always promote how great it is. But the reality is, when you really dig into the numbers, more often than not, the estate is getting less money at the end of the day by 5%, in my experience, or more, than they otherwise would through the normal channel. Even with a slightly higher commission, they're going to net less money overall based on the statistics. If you're interested in discussing this with me and going more detail, please reach out, call, text, or email. I'm at Bill Gross Probate, social media. As always, thank you, and make today your best